Welcome back to another episode of the Brett Snodgrass podcast. Thank you guys for joining me today. Make sure you guys go over to YouTube and subscribe to our Iron Deep channel. We got all of these video podcasts on our Iron Deep channel, and we have also videos coming out each and every month right now with some great reflection videos that I'm doing. I think our last one was on pride. We just did one on family, so go check that out on our YouTube channel. And please subscribe to this particular podcast wherever you're listening to this at. That's how we get votes, and also leave us a 5-star review. Would really appreciate that, guys. My guest on today's podcast is Shelly Rood, and Shelly, she has served in the United States Army Reserves for 16 years as an intelligence officer. Now she's a small business owner, and she's an ordained minister. And guys, we talk about, on this particular episode, the concern of mental health that we've, as civilians, have all been facing, but really we talk about the mental health directed towards our soldiers that have served in the military, our veterans. We dig deep and we understand how do we help our military with their mental health needs. Shelly described that 22 veterans are committing suicide every single day. It is a huge problem. We aren't talking about it, and our faith-based organizations are not serving our military. They don't have military ministries, so she's connecting our spiritual warriors with our earthly warriors. She is very passionate about it. She is a strong woman. She digs into that too. This is just a great conversation with someone. So if you want to learn about how do we help the people that are serving our country, that are giving you freedom, literally right now, so you can sit there and have freedom, whatever it is, and fighting for you, how do we serve them? And we're going to talk about today. Here she is, Shelly Rood. What's going on? We're back with our guest on today's podcast. I got Shelly Rood out of Michigan. What's going on, Shelly?
Brett Snodgrass, you're so cool. You have the best last name next to me. I'm so excited to talk with you.
I know. We should start a company. It'd be like Rood Snodgrass.
Everybody will remember us.
Slash it. Oh man, I'm super excited for today's episode because it's a lot different. Number one, I don't get to interview a lot of females, so I wanted all of our female listeners, I'm super excited, and male listeners, super excited to interview a female today. So that's really cool. And a female that's been in the military serving our country. So thank you for that. And we're really going to just dive into that. And guys, we're really going to dive into something that has probably been on the minds and hearts of us all, especially in the past few years. And we're really going to dive into mental health, number one, especially directed towards mental health of our soldiers that have served, and we're going to talk about that. But before we really dive into your organization, Warriors with Warriors, talking about mental health, let's talk about Shelly Rood. So, who is Shelly Rood?
Shelly Rood's a hot mess, number one. I served. I'm here in Michigan. That's very important. I'm a Michigander at heart. I live right outside of Detroit. I spend all weekend in downtown Detroit. And I went to Western Michigan University. So I was a distinguished military graduate from there, which meant that I got to pick my branch. If you don't know now, there's 6 branches in the military. We'll talk about those. And I got to choose Army, and then I got to choose my branch within the Army, and I did choose the Intelligence Corps. So I went on to have a very successful 16-year career in military intelligence in the Army Reserves. And I have some active duty time in there. I've been to some really cool places like South Korea and Fort Lewis, Washington, a lot of time at Fort Huachuca, Arizona. And I've been around a lot and I've seen a lot. If you want to know the dirty laundry, I'll put a little bit out there because I'm sure we have this in common with our listeners.
Oh, for sure.
I am divorced. I was previously married to an active duty soldier, Army Ranger, very, very hardcore type. And it was something that involved alcohol abuse. It involved a lot of substance use. It involved a lot of adultery even. And it lasted 10 years and we got a child out of it.
Wow.
So moving from that transition into now I'm remarried, very, very much have found Jesus, and same with my husband. He's the most incredible man I've ever known, just because I don't know your audience very well yet, Brett.
Yeah.
And that's a little bit of the story, you know, so I've lived a lot of life. I'm not somebody that was born and raised in a little church bubble. I didn't come to Jesus until I was in my 30s.
Wow. Well, we have a lot in common, honestly, because I came to Jesus at 30. So I was not raised that way either. So not only do we have interesting last names, but we also came to Christ later in life. So I just want to ask this: like you say, the intelligence department of the Army, what does that involve? Like, what do you guys do? What does your kind of life look like in that?
So it depends on what type of intelligence you're doing, and it absolutely depends on your branch. So for me, as a person, I did choose to become an officer. So as an officer, I was a 35 Delta. And what that means is an all source tactical intelligence officer. And as an all source, what that means is there's lots of different sources of intelligence. So if you listen to the rumbling of the ground, that's a source of intelligence. You can actually tell which trucks are headed your way, right? Like the old Indian cup of water to the wall, that kind of thing. And imagery, right? IMINT is called imagery analyst, and they only look at photographs. And so, what I would do as an all source leader is have a team of unique individuals that studied those specifics. And I would have them dig into whatever our mission was, and we would make the recommendations to the command. So, let's say that you have someone, a new general or somebody new in command, and they want to send out troops to go on patrol in Iraq. And they know what time they used to go out, but they've lost a lot of soldiers lately, and they want to know maybe this should be changed. So I would dig into my team. We would pull all sorts of data, everything from what types of explosives happen to the time, the days, the holidays, celebrations throughout the year. All of that, we would take a look at it, and we would give the recommendation to the commander of here's when we think that you should be going out to help save the lives of your troops. It's good work. It's extremely detailed, extremely
For sure.
meaningful work, and it carries a lot of moral weight because
Yeah.
when you're wrong in my position, you are
Some
very
lives.
wrong.
Yeah, there's lives at stake. Wow. Very, very important, very detailed. That's just very interesting. I was just, a lot of our audience and me that have not served, sometimes, we hear words that you might use every single day, and we're like, oh, can you dig us into that? Because we don't, never experienced that. And obviously, we've all experienced a little bit of mental health concern. This has been a little bit of a topic, especially over the last few years with the pandemic. But a lot of times, again, when I say mental health, I might be talking about I have some anxiety because I'm stressed a little bit at work, because I'm too busy a little bit. I can't get off my social media, whatever it looks like. And my mental health is a little bit of I'm just stressed, a little bit busy. But I want you to dive into a little bit of a soldier's mental health and the concerns with that. And again, a lot of our audience has not served. So what have you seen with mental health of
Well, first and
soldiers?
foremost, I'm excited that you're even saying the phrase mental health and mental wellness because in the military world, it up until recently, it's been a dirty phrase. It's worse than pornography.
Wow.
You don't talk about mental health. You don't talk about mental wellness. And of course, we're always encouraged to get the help we need. But I mean, gosh, who wants to go get help? Nobody. We never ask for help. We just do things the hard way,
Yeah.
myself included. So when we're looking at the mental statistics of wellness across our military population, really digging into the veteran population, we don't really disclose mental health statistics of our active service members, right? I mean, that would be like a bad war move on our nation's part.
Yeah.
So when we look at numbers, we really do look at the veteran numbers. And if you're not familiar, 22 is a very, very popular number. And that means that 22 veterans every single day within the United States are taking their own lives. And that statistics has been around since 2017. And since 2017, it has gone as low as 17 a day. And it's unfortunately even risen back up to 22 a day. And now it's looking like it's climbing higher. So it is very, very significant when you talk about death by suicide. The chances are double that of the civilian population for both men and for women.
Interesting. So let's take it a little bit deeper. So people are taking their own lives, veterans. Why? What has gotten them to that point? Yeah. What have they experienced? What has gotten in them? Because obviously their life has to, desperation obviously to get to
Mhm.
that point, but
I
why
appreciate
is that?
that question
Yeah.
because there's this assumption that all of these deaths by suicide are happening because of some traumatic thing we experienced in war and we just haven't been able to
Yeah. Because when you
recover
say
and
that,
heal
like,
through
I'm
it.
thinking, oh, the soldier killed a lot of people. Their friend got blown up beside them. Okay. But
Yep. So there's a lot that
yeah.
contributes to that. So let's take the state of Michigan as an example here. The state of Michigan does not have an active duty military base anywhere within the state. We have multiple installations that are federal installations. We train a lot of reservists. We have a lot of National Guard. Our death by suicide rate is not any better than the national.
Mm.
So, what's happening in the state of Michigan, we can prove is that people are taking their own lives because of the same things as to why civilians take their own lives. And it tends to be like a toppling board. And you know, Brett, with a lot of the leadership that work that you do, that there's different areas of life, right? There's family, there's business, there's faith. And what happens is when it's not just one thing that goes bad, it's not just two things that go bad.
Mm.
It's all the little things start to snowball and get out of hand. And then when you feel like you actually can't come back, that's when we decide not to come back.
Mm.
And so in the state of Michigan, we're talking about death by suicide from a veteran perspective. We're talking about the same issues that our civilians are facing as well. And that's why there is such a huge opportunity here for our people of faith to be connecting with our military personnel, because this is stuff that we all have in common. When I say business, you say business. When I say kids, you say kids. Yeah, maybe it looks a little bit different from here to there, but we have those in common.
Yeah. Yeah. And would you say that statistics could get higher just because of the lifestyle of the military? I mean, I've seen, again, I had a previous relationship at one time, and I think her sister's husband was in the military, and I look at their life and I'm like, man, that's a hard life.
It's a very hard
Just
life. It's
just
a
as a
very hard
family
life.
dynamic. It's
Yeah,
a hard
so
life.
it is more common for divorce to happen inside of the military than out. And I personally went through that, right? So I was married to a military soldier and we made it almost 10 years. And we used to joke that we were apart more than we were together. And it was a joke. And it was, looking back, not a funny joke
Right.
because we didn't really know we didn't have the intimacy of what a couple who lives day in and day out and actually does life together. When you do life together with somebody, that is so special and so amazing.
Mm.
And yes, it's very, very difficult to do that in a military or first responder environment.
Yeah, definitely. So when I think of the military or veterans, typically the people that I might think of that would be interested in helping are typically other people that have also served or other veterans. But you've actually created an organization, Warriors with Warriors. It's a program connecting spiritual warriors with earthly warriors. So can you kind of just dive in, like how did you come about this particular program, and why are you so passionate about it?
Absolutely. So, in my military history, when I was discharged, I was actually an intelligence officer that had a request to transfer from intelligence to the chaplain corps. And it's God's will that I never actually became a military chaplain. So I was discharged because of health reasons, and I can't reenlist and get back in. And so now I'm here. I'm with you and your audience. I'm trapped as a civilian,
Yeah,
and I have this heart for military people, and I have all of these gifts, and I love the Lord. How do I do it? So I'm a civilian chaplain serving the military,
mm,
and I had another civilian chaplain approach me. His name is Chaplain Brian Webb, and the Warriors with Warriors program really is his vision. And there are statistics that show that when a veteran or a military person is connected to an organization of faith, like a mosque or a synagogue or a church, then they are less likely to die by suicide and have these severe mental health issues. It's all about giving that level of support system.
mm,
And so, armed with that data, he was able to go to the federal government and get grant dollars to help fund this program. So, we're not joking around when we say you have the genuine opportunity to make a difference in the life of a military person. And that can happen in just a 5-minute conversation.
mm.
It just has to be intentional.
Yeah, no, definitely. Would you also say that, I want to talk about more about this connecting spiritual warriors with earthly warriors. And I just had maybe a personal question too. Do you find it that it's hard when someone's serving and they kind of have this community, right? I'm sure close quarters, some of your best friends, you're doing things together, you're on mission together, purpose together, and then you get out of that, and then you probably feel the loneliness, and like we're all designed to be in community. So would you also say that just maybe the community piece and belonging to the church and getting involved with that is a huge piece as well?
It's huge. It's absolutely huge. And in fact, there is clinical evidence that shows that peer support is a critical and effective strategy for the ongoing healthcare and sustained behavior change. Now, when you think about the military camaraderie, are you thinking about Captain America, or are you thinking about Tony Stark? Because most people think of Captain America. And I would love it if our United States military was full of Captain Americas. Right. But I'll be honest with you, there's a lot more Tony Starks running around unchecked. And from the mouths of one of my dear friends, he's a general. He said that the Army life is very Sparta. And it absolutely is, and I'll keep it, somewhat PG rated here, but you're talking about hookers, and you're talking about pornography, and you're talking about what we call MST, is military sexual trauma. And the rate for MST is 1 in 3 or 1 in 4, depending on the report that you look at. Brett, let me ask you, like, what public company, if you gave your company report at the end of the year and you were like, yeah, our military sexual trauma rate against our people is 1 in 3 and 1 in 4. Like, who is celebrating that?
Right. Yeah.
It's not okay, no matter which way we spin it. And then I'll just kind of drive this point home a little bit more. That rate is the same for men as it is for women. So I think already maybe in this conversation, we've dispelled a few stereotypes of when we think of veterans and what we face and what we go through.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I couldn't even imagine. I mean, I think that is it just kind of just a common thread when you enter into that space and in that environment that's just, it's just what you do. It's just an expectation.
It's the culture. It's the culture. There's, and I don't know that I'll ever be able to change it, right? But there has to be some type of change within our military culture. It's not okay. And maybe we're not paying for it while we're in, but as soon as you get your discharge papers and you're out, that's where the negative mental health statistics are showing. And so I bring all this up, Brett, just because you were talking about community. And yeah, there is a significant loss of community. And then I want to challenge that. Well, just because you were around a whole bunch of buddies and you guys laughed and drank and shared women and whatever, right? Now that you're out as a veteran and life is like seriously hard, and you call them when you're struggling and they're not there for you. I mean, as a Christian, there has to be a deeper level of care and support within the community. And that's where the people of faith have the biggest opportunity.
Yeah, no, for sure. So let's really just talk about that. Because a lot of times people that have not served, as I mentioned before, there's just this gap of how do we care, or maybe we just don't know what to say. We don't really know what to do. And I know you actually even wrote this article that really kind of dives into this. And so let's just talk about how civilians and people in faith can care for soldiers and people that have served beyond what we're doing now. And what are we doing now? So
that's a good question.
You even said, I go to our church, again, Veterans Day, everyone stands up, gives some respect, gives some honor. If someone serves and I know that they served, our common response to that is thank you for serving, period. That's it.
Yeah. So and now I feel really awkward and I shake my head and go, no problem. Right. Or I give the line, don't thank me, thank your recruiter.
Right. Yeah.
And I walk away.
Right. So take us into that. You say it like even in this article that we need to go beyond that sometimes that doesn't even help at all. It actually hurts. So
it can. Yeah. So if you really want to make a meaningful connection, what we're talking about here is not somebody that you already know and have a relationship. So this is somebody at church or at the gas station, right? So you see somebody in uniform or they're wearing a veteran hat and you just really want to honor their service time. And the go-to typically tends to be thank you for your service.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine. I'm not going to tell you that that's a bad thing. I mean, I'm somebody that's actually been spit on wearing the military uniform.
Mm-hmm.
So if you already have a positive heart attached to military people, I want to say thank you and I want to encourage you. I just don't want you to stop there.
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead and open the conversation with thank you for your service. And please carve out 2 or 3 additional minutes to stand there and show a personal interest in the human being in front of you. Mm. Remember that when you're in the military, you don't have personal identity. You are the uniform. Right. So when somebody takes an extra couple of minutes to ask us a question like, what branch are you serving in? Now we have something to talk about. Right. And so there's 4 things that you can really ask that are very, very simple. And we won't go into detail because, again, you can just read them in the article. But the first one is what branch? And that was right. You and I started out with that. And what we're calling all of these lessons is something called military cultural competency. We want you to be competent and confident about how you're engaging with military personnel. And so to do that, you got to know the branches. So we teach all of 6 branches, including now the Space Force. Yes. If Space Force would have been around, I bet I would have been a Space Force. Absolutely.
You're talking Star Wars stuff?
Yeah, man. Wow, I went to space camp when I was in middle school.
That's cool.
I'm such a nerd, right? Gosh, such a nerd.
That's cool.
I'm going to have to go lift weights after this to feel better about myself. So you can ask them what branch they served and then ask them why they chose. Like I totally told you why I went into intelligence versus something else. And I really thought maybe I would go into engineer, but somebody swayed my opinion and I ended up going intelligence. So there's just cool stories when you start asking. You can even ask, why did you join? Why'd you join the military? And don't assume that you already know the answer. Very few of us joined because of the Captain America patriotic, do my duty for my country. Right. A lot of us joined for the money. A lot of us joined to get away from our little hole in the wall, live in nowhere town. My friend Nancy Dakin she's a combat fighter pilot. She's one of the most amazing people I've ever known. You ask her why she joined on a bet.
Oh my gosh.
There's some crazy stories out there and you would never know unless you took the moment to ask that question. Yeah. So what branch did you serve in? Why did you join? What was your job? Right. I'm like 35 Delta. You're like, what in the world is that?
Yeah.
And don't feel ashamed or embarrassed that you don't know the jargon. I served intelligence over 16 years. I don't even know all the jargon. Yeah. I have some Air Force person standing next to me and we're talking about the flight line and the call signs that they have. And I was using the word handle and he's like, and this is General Slocum. He's a good friend of mine. He's like, Shelly, handle. We don't use handles. I'm like, well, what do you use? Right. So, I mean, even within the branches, we don't understand each other. So never feel stupid about asking those definitive questions.
Yeah. Now, I love that. And I've actually been trying to study on how to connect in a deeper level anyways. And I think we've just gotten into this routine of saying these certain things. So again, thank you for your service, something we say, or what do you do for a living, or how was your day? Even with my kids, I'm trying to get into that deeper connection. I think we can all learn just to get in that deeper connection with humans, right? It's just like you said, your identity becomes your uniform, you're a number, and to be treated with value it's just different.
No,
right?
You don't really think about the experiences we have unless you've been in. So I'm a female and I'm in military uniform and I'm like driving a Humvee, across the United States. And I think we're in maybe Kentucky at this point. And we get off at a gas station and I go, and I'm just waiting in line to use the bathroom. And this older woman is standing behind me and it's all just crickets. And all of a sudden she says, it's an awesome job you have there. And I looked at her and in my mind, right? I mean, I'm like, feminist Shelley, so empowered, thinking like, here I am, a captain, so proud of being on military orders. And I just looked at her and I said, you know what? It is a great job I had. And she looked at me and she shook her head and she said, being around all those men. I thought I was going to die.
Oh my gosh. Well, let me ask that question to you then, just for audience, because probably that is some stereotypical thing. Like, what is it like as a female serving?
Well, that's a whole nother podcast
Okay.
episode. No, it is. It's amazing. It's amazing, right? And so I have the benefit of being both civilian and military
Mm-hmm.
because I was a reserve. So I had a broadcast television career. I also had a career in the fitness industry, and doing both of them at the same time, I got to really see the juxtaposition between how businesses treat women in the business environment and how the military treats a woman.
Mm.
And I have to tell you,
What'd you say? What'd you see?
the stereotypes are totally wrong. They
Mm.
really are. So I went on a job interview in the civilian world, and the general manager looked at me and he said, Shelly, I have a concern about you serving in the military. Don't you think that you'll be less creative and you've lost your ability to think outside of the box? And I said, sir, I don't mean to sound rude, but you couldn't be any further from the truth. Because the truth is that in the military, your boss doesn't care how you get the job done. Your boss tells you, go get the job done.
I don't care how you do it.
And so typically when you hire military and veteran people, you get this enormous amount of creativity and problem solving. Yes, absolutely. So even in our brains, right, we're wired differently.
Yeah, I love that. You say that we shouldn't say, I'll pray for you.
I know the chaplain said, don't say that.
Which actually, that's kind of a pet peeve for me too. And I've done this, honestly, and I think we all do this, is when you hear those words, automatically you think of, really? Are you really going to pray for me? Like, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and how many times? I bet 95%, 99% of the time they don't.
Well, let's even take it a step back here. Who are you going to pray to? I don't know the answer to that question. If you and I just met in a gas station.
True.
And you're like, oh, God bless you. Thank you for your service. I'm going to pray for you tonight. That military person inside of their head, their response is not going to be, oh, thank goodness this wonderful, wholesome American is going to put me on their prayer list. Like, that is not the internal dialogue that is happening. Right. It's going to sound more like this. I don't need your help. I don't know who you think you are, thinking that you have power over me or my people. And I don't want you to pray for me. Who the heck are you praying to? There ain't no God anyway. It's a very, very negative rhetoric.
Wow.
Very negative rhetoric. And so the whole I'll pray for you thing, right? So like, Brett, I don't know if I have friends of like every belief system.
Yeah.
And we talk on a regular basis about all the different things in life. And if a Muslim came up to me and said, Shelly, I'm going to pray for you tonight. No thanks. Okay, that's for you, right?
Yeah.
That's for them. They're going to pray to whoever about whatever. That has no effect on me because I don't even believe in that.
Right. Yeah.
And so kind of carry that mentality over into interacting with a military person. You cannot assume that we're all Christian because very, 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 very few of us actually are. And I know this because one of the founding moments of me to become a chaplain was during one of my trainings. We had to update our paperwork, and on the roster, it's time to get new ID tags, your dog tags, right? They wear around your neck. When you die, you put one on your toe. So on the roster, it has a space for your name and for your religion. And I'm looking through the roster, and I was one of the last ones of my hundreds and hundreds of troops. And I'll tell you what, that line, the column for religion, was blank. Almost every single person, it was just totally and absolutely and completely blank. So what we have here is opportunity.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And not to force a viewpoint, but we have an opportunity to plant a seed. So when we talk about interacting with military people, there are 3 big issues that are outlined in the article. And one of them is forcing a religious viewpoint. And the phrase, I'll pray for you, is unintentionally forcing a religious viewpoint on another human being. And I just want everyone to remember that we believe deeply in freedom of religion. And for a lot of us, we hold that very, very dear, even if we're not Christian. Awesome. So instead of I'll pray for you, once you get to know them a little bit and you open a few questions, you can ask, do you have a certain belief system? Do you have a faith that you subscribe to? And then you can judge your answer appropriately from there. And then if you feel like they do disclose that they are Christian, or yes, they're going to church on Sunday, then it would be appropriate. And don't just say, I'll pray for you. That's like, bleh. Go ahead and take it a little bit deeper and say, how can I pray for you?
Yeah.
Or how can I support you? And then wait for a specific answer.
Yeah, I love that. So with Warriors with Warriors, what's kind of like your big goal in this? I know you want to connect you talked about connecting spiritual warriors with earthly warriors, and you're kind of connecting that. But do you have a kind of a vision for Warriors with Warriors, a big goal?
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely. So
what
it
do you
is
like to
all
see?
about training. It's about training. It's about connecting with as many faith organizations as we can and asking that question. Do you have a military ministry?
Mm,
And it's either a yes or a no. And if it's a yes, then it's like, that's awesome. How can we support and bolster your efforts? And if it's a no, it's still, that's awesome. Let's get you connected to somebody who does so that your military personnel are not falling through the cracks.
mm,
And so that's where we start. And then the next step is training. Warriors with Warriors, we've really identified the need for two types of training modules. The first is military cultural competency, which is what you and I have really been talking about the most today. The second training module is imperative, and that is crisis awareness training. Crisis awareness is how to even recognize and know the statistics around military personnel when they might be facing issues of dark thoughts or depression or anxiety. Questions to ask them. A really, really, really good question. And, this is applicable to anybody. When you feel like maybe something's not right with somebody, I want you to ask them this question. Is this the hardest things have ever been for you?
mm. Wow.
And don't be afraid of what they say next.
Awesome. This is good. This is very good information.
Too many soldiers that I know who have lost loved ones taken by suicide say, I should have seen the signs.
Yeah.
And then after they go through our training and they recognize what the signs are, there's just a level of guilt sometimes that is really difficult to overcome. And so I want you to get in front of the situation, learn the signs, learn what to watch for, learn how to have the conversations so that we can get them to the right resources. And you and I know, we're believers in Christ, so we know that all of it's God's plan anyway. And he's just using us along the path. It's just God's plan anyway. We're just helping each other out along the way.
For sure. And it probably is really, really difficult for, just because of the culture, we talked about the culture a little bit, to speak up, right? It's kind of like, I'm sure the culture maybe is just to stuff down. We don't, maybe it's, I don't feel anything.
That's a big part of it.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, yeah, you're like talking to me here. I did, right? I had 10 years of a marriage that was as tough and horrendous as you can get. I've had my throat grabbed, been slammed against a wall, then, there's a gentleman sleeping in the bed next to me that's throwing up. He's had so much to drink. Like, I have been there. Mm-hmm. It is dark and it is dirty. And no, I don't need your help.
Yeah.
From the outside in, everybody, right? Yes, Shelly, you need help. You needed it then and you need it now. But there is that culture of stuff it down and throw it away and drive on, right? We call it mission first. And we're losing people. We are. Mm. And so that's one of the main reasons why the statistics for mental wellness are so terrible amongst our veteran population, is because this whole idea of asking for help. Asking for help is a terrible phrase. Don't ever say it. If you use the word help like anywhere in your dialogue, I just encourage you to just get rid of it. It's so pompous. What, right? How many business, I know half your audience is going to hate me for this. So when people ask you, what do you do? And you tell them about your business and your 60-second elevator pitch starts with, I help. Like, can we just change that? Because every military person out there just went, yeah. We got to go deeper. We do. We got to go deeper.
For sure. Before we wrap up the show, you talked about this before we really hit record, and this is the concept of moral injury. And this is a term that I hadn't heard of before. Some of the other mental health issues. We talked about post-traumatic stress and just the crisis, things like that. But moral injury is a little bit something different. And I think not just people that have served, but anyone, especially in the last few years, can get maybe a lot out of this. So what exactly is this moral injury?
Yeah, so moral injury is something that happens before PTSD. We're all familiar with post-traumatic stress disorder or post-traumatic stress. A moral injury is the distressing psychological, behavioral, social, sometimes even spiritual aftermath of exposure to certain events. A moral injury can occur in response to acting or even witnessing behaviors that go against someone's values and moral beliefs. So a really powerful example, it's a little dramatic. So, just kind of use your caution here. One of my good friends was serving overseas in a war zone, and his job was to stand security over what we call is a burn pit. There's a lot of death, decay, dying around the burn pits. And as he's standing there pulling security, he's watching the wild animals and the dogs and the dingoes come over and have a feast, essentially. That's a horrible situation to be in.
For sure. Yeah.
He has changed for life because of that job assignment. When he comes back home and he goes through his screening at the, we'll just call it the health place, that's not PTSD. What is that? Right? Nothing actually happened. There was no trauma attached to that. So what we've done is we've developed this term called moral injury, and it's being a part of a situation that can be either an action or a lack of action that has a deep effect on you. And when we talk about morals, right, we have to look at all of the different areas of morals. And we have within our own lives, one of the teachings that we do is 11 different areas of ethical influence that you really need to know where you stand on. Everything from business ethics to the environmental ethics, to your family ethics, to beginning of life and end of life ethics. And if you don't know where you are on the sliding scale of all those pieces, right there, that's why we have such a problem even communicating and having day-to-day conversations, because you're on this end of the sliding scale, I'm on this end of the sliding scale, and we're both hurting from some type of moral injuries that we've been through over the last few years.
Yeah.
And I'll just wrap it up with this, because it is so interesting. The only way to heal or recover from a moral injury is to have some sort of understanding as to why. There is no pill. There's no way to actually heal this except to help understand that question of why. Why did that young man have to stand on that hill? If he can answer that question for himself, then he won't have so much negative headspace about that time in his life. And I encourage the same to you and to all of your listeners. If you've just got this moment of your life where you just feel hurt, you feel wronged, you hate it. I mean, this can happen walking around, and maybe you disagree with cross-dressing, right? And you see somebody and you're just like, oh, that's a moral injury.
Yeah.
And that's why we have such a hard time with the political climate that we're facing right now.
Right. Wow. That's true. It's all around us too. Right. And the civilians, I mean, I'm for sure. Well,
healthcare workers, absolutely. The types of people that witness moral injuries tend to be your first responders and your military. Healthcare workers are right there, especially. Absolutely.
And just think about, the last couple of years in the pandemic, what side were you on? And you would look at this person or judge this person and judge the government or whatever. And it's just, kind of crazy.
Here in Michigan, we are losing troops constantly because of the forced vaccines.
Yeah.
Even if they're for the vaccine, they don't think that they should be forced to have it.
Right.
And so, boom, just like that, your career is over.
Yeah.
That's a moral injury.
Amen. Well, we'll wrap up with this question. So you're a mom too, raising a couple of boys. We talked about that. You have a almost teenager and a young 2-year-old. 2 boys, and we're kind of living in this self-focused culture, and you've been around the military, and kind of, again, you've since these are boys, we're living kind of in this culture that we're in now. What's some of the training, or what is some of the learnings that you want to train into your own family, into your own boys, as they grow up?
Well, my feminist hand goes up real quick. I hate to say it that way, but like when I see how my son reacts to movies, I always say I'm not a feminazi, but I very much am a feminist. I believe that God created 2, and I believe that the 2 are equal. And when I see my son embracing a young woman because she is strong, because she is a leader, because she is skilled, because she is talented, that brings me a lot of joy. I very much, and I'm not putting down anyone who is a homemaker, right? If that's their choice. I believe that there's biblical evidence for both being a homemaker and for being out in the business working world as a woman. And when I see my children really embracing that, that gives me so much joy. I really appreciate that, because it gives me hope for the next generation, that they're not going to have that reaction, even like the female did in the bathroom to me. Oh, you get to be around all those men? Like, come on. There's so much more that we have to give each other in society. And that's what I'm really excited about. And of course, I mean, let me tell you what, I would go into severe debt not to have my kid in public school. They're both in a private Christian academy. They are being taught the Bible day in, day out. They have faith formation, first class of the day. And you know what? When he's grown and out of there, it's his choice what he does, but I'm not going to screw up as a parent.
Right.
Because you know what? Shelly screwed up for like the first maybe 30 years of her life.
For sure.
And I feel like if my parents had invested more in faith in me when I was young, I would not have been such a hot mess up until now. I feel like now I finally got it together.
You definitely do. And I love what you're doing with Warriors with Warriors. And it's an awesome organization. You've taught me a lot on this show. I know you've taught our audience a lot on this show as well. How can we support you with Warriors with Warriors?
Well, I was intelligence for many, many years, which means that I didn't have social media. I was secret squirrel. You couldn't find me if you paid somebody. And that is over. That portion of my life is over. So I would love for you to keep up with me on social media. Our company teaches the others over self. That's our leadership mindset. And you can check out the free article that we have just for your audience, Brett, at othersoverself.com/Snodgrass.
Awesome.
Love your last name. I have to tell you, one time I was in Korea and I walked past a major and his name was Major. There was actually a major walking around in Korea.
Major. Oh my gosh. That reminds me of the movie with like Airplane, I think. That's so funny. Awesome. Well, sounds good, Shelly. We're going to put all that in our show notes, guys, at our YouTube channel, so go check that out. Thank you so much for that and providing that for us and our audience. And it's been a blast, Shelly. Really appreciate you and your mission, so thank you.
I appreciate you as somebody who lost the first 10 years of a marriage because it went horribly wrong, because God was not involved. Brett, what you do to mentor and guide men is extremely needed. If there were more men that followed like you and my husband, the world would be so much better, even for us strong women.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's, wherever you're at in life, just having some encouragement just goes a long way. So I really appreciate you. So I want to encourage you to keep doing what you're doing. You're making such a great difference. And that's it. That's a wrap. Shelly Rood. Thanks, Shelly.